Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol list building episode. And today we are being a terrible, terrible human being. We are making a list for horrible, horrible people that my locals and I have kind of talked about some ideas for this type of list before, and we refer to it as a death and taxes list. So basically, the idea behind this list is denying your opponent from having fun. In slightly more serious words, it's going to be all about stopping your opponent from using their abilities as often as they would like to, stopping them from getting their triggers, doing as much damage as they want to, generally just keeping all of their characters very power starved, very, unable to get any of the things they want to get done, not able to push much damage through, that sort of thing. So it's going to kind of play towards a more kind of bulky style play style and just kind of denying your opponent their things. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get right into things here. And we're going to start things out by talking about, first of all, the two most important characters for this type of list. The characters that kind of define this, and if at all possible, you're going to probably want to bring up both of these characters almost every game. And those two characters are Crimson Dynamo right here. And the reason why you want Crimson Dynamo for this is because he has this disruption field for those unfamiliar. Basically, whenever your allies are targeted by attacks or himself, and the enemy is within 3, he pays 2 power and he rerolls 2 of their attack dice. So this is really, really big for denying damage, but also really, really good for saying, oh, that trigger you really needed, whether it's, a stagger, a throw, or even just a condition. Uh, yeah, no, you didn't get that. Try again. Really, really powerful, really obnoxious to deal with. So immediately being included in this list here is Mr. Dynamo here. And then the other model that's very, very much in this kind of, you know, you don't play the game, you play my game, is going to be Loki. And yeah, Loki is great for this. He has this God of Mischief superpower here, which is while within 4 of this character, enemy characters must spend 1 extra power before using a active or reactive superpower. This is really, really obnoxious into a lot of different things. This is just super annoying to play into. It's root, but it's not actually called root, so it does stack with root, and we're definitely going to be taking advantage of that later in the list. And if we go and flip him over here, once he's been flipped, he does even more things. Additionally, while within range 4 of this character, enemy characters do not even get extra dice for critical results as well. So, really, really rude, totally obnoxious piece, and we're definitely going to be including him in the list because that is kind of the core plan of the list here. And for Loki with this list, I do like to give him a stone. It gives him a little bit more power to be able to do some of the things that he wants to do on his own turn. And usually, personally, I'm partial to the Space Stone on Loki here, but today we're going to be giving him the Mind Stone because that is a little bit more of a screw off to your opponent sort of thing. Oh, your model is also out of position on top of being power starved, on top of never doing enough damage. Have fun. Um, yeah, these two models are already an incredibly annoying combo, but we are going to make it so much worse. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and continue with that. All right, so now that we have kind of our core of, screwing over your opponent models, we want to start thinking about ways we can actually make this playable. We want to give it a leadership and things like that. And there's a couple options that kind of come to mind. The first one, very, very obvious, is going to be Emma here. We're starting out with two characters that don't share a single affiliation. I guarantee you there will be more in this list. So going with a leader that can have any affiliation is pretty good. Additionally, Emma does actually play into this game plan very, very well. She has the Shield Mind superpower, denying your opponent from advancing, placing, or pushing your characters, which is going to be really, really good. For a lot of reasons, this is going to, A, just again, be another thing you're denying your opponent from being able to do, because the whole point of this list is that your opponent is not allowed to have fun. But the other side of this too is it's going to stop them from displacing Loki, Crimson Dynamo, and some of the other pieces in this type of list. So we're going to be able to kind of screw over our opponent that way and just be like, okay, you can't even get these guys out of your way, so you don't have to deal with their aura because Emma's going to deny you that as well. So almost an auto include there. Emma is going to be one of our leaders for this for sure. Now, this next pick is probably not the most competitive version of this roster you could build, but I think it still plays really, really well into the kind of theme and the idea, and I think it's a cool extra leadership option for you to have here. And that pick is, of course, Dormammu. So we're gonna go ahead and pull up Dormammu here, not Domino, Dormammu. There we go. And why do I like Dormammu for this? Well, he has the same thing as Emma, where he can bring whoever he wants, so that's obviously somewhat valuable right out the gate. But the real reason why I like him here is the Feel the Power of Darkness. When you attack him, he gets to use this power. He's going to push you away, push you out of position, somewhere you don't want to be, and you're going to gain the Hex condition. If he's already hexed you, you're going to be on fire. And I think Hex plays more into what we're doing here of just kind of denying your opponent anything. But Incinerate's always good as well. And yeah, I think Feel the Power of the Darkness is a really fun kind of ability for this, of just like, yeah, so you don't want to attack this guy at all, and also he's going to be doing his thing. He's got a sap power on his builder, as well as a hex on his builder as well, or not builder, he doesn't have a builder, but whatever you want to call this, his zero cost attack. So he's going to be playing that game as well. He's going to be powering up the rest of your team. That's going to make it easier for Crimson Dynamo to do his thing. It's going to make it easier for Loki to do his thing. Of course, if you're running the three of them, you are already at 17 threats, so you're going to have to keep that in mind. But we're going to include Dormammu here just because, honestly, I think it's fun, and we're going to do that. All right, so the next model we want to throw into this list is probably going to be someone to stack well with Loki and hand out more roots and other really obnoxious conditions. And I think the best choice for that is probably going to be Pyro. So if I can go ahead and find him here, there he is. Pyro is one of the most obnoxious characters to play against. Just in general, but in this type of list, he's going to be even worse. He's going to be handing out roots and slows. He's going to be handing out incinerates. The root and slow, again, really play into what we're trying to do here. Root stacked with Loki, so even your free superpowers are costing you 2 power is incredibly obnoxious. And then if you have something like a charge, your average charge is going to cost you 4 power and you're only moving slow. Not a fun time. Nobody wants to deal with that. Yeah, Pyro is super obnoxious and really, really valuable for this list for sure. One thing worth acknowledging is in some of the versions of this list that I did kind of plan out, I did also strongly consider Groot for the same reason, and I did strongly consider bringing both of them together just for a little bit of redundancy. Groot has that same deal where he's handing out the root condition. He's also handing out staggers and guaranteed throws on his spender when he gets that off, so that's also really nice. He's got a little bit more health and generally slightly tankier than Pyro, I would say. Of course, the 2 energy is not great, but the extra health, having 7 on both sides, is really, really nice. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I do like him for this type of list. And then the other side of that is he has this living plant superpower to heal damage from himself, 3 damage for only 2 power, which is really, really efficient. And another thing to kind of just, see the defeat in your opponent's eyes is they spent their turn trying to deal with Groot, and he has healed almost half of his full health for 2 of the at least 3 power you gave him here. Yeah, it's really obnoxious and rude. Unfortunately, though, Groot doesn't make the cut in my list today. I just had too many competitive slots for this one, but he is someone who I wanted to kind of give an honorable mention to for that 3 threat slot because I do think he plays really well into the idea. Instead of Groot, the other model we're going to be including in the 3 threat slot here is Black Cat. And the reason why we're including Black Cat here is she has a stagger that under both of these leaderships is going to be online every round. Under Emma, it won't be online until round 2, but under Dormammu, it's online every single round. Under Emma, it's round 2 onwards, and that's really annoying. She's going to be handing out these staggers like crazy, hopefully. She's got an objective steal, so you're not even allowed to play the objective game, and when you attack her, you can't modify your attack dice, you don't roll extra dice for your crits. This is exactly what we're doing. Black Cat was made for this list. So yeah, that's again just another model that's going to deny your opponent the things that they want to do when they try to attack you. While we are in this section, I am going to give another honorable mention here, and he's totally not in this section. He's under T, isn't he? We're going to give another honorable mention here to Blob. And the reason why we're mentioning Blob here is he kind of has the same deal as what Dormammu is doing with that ha 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 that tickles ability, where he gets to reduce the amount of damage that he takes from an attack and then push the opposing character away small. Just a really obnoxious thing to play into that definitely, if you want to kind of lean into that style thing where you're really just making it so your opponent has an annoying time attacking your characters, maybe you want to lean more into that than the condition stuff with Pyro or Black Cat. A different version of this list could see a lot of value from Blob. So I think he deserves an honorable mention here, but he unfortunately doesn't make the 10 either. The next three threat we are going to talk about is Mr. Shocker here, and Shocker is great for this list. We're already going to be handing out a lot of shocks with Crimson Dynamo. We're going to be giving all of our opponents one less attack dice, but Shocker has his not actually shock aura here if the ground is rocking, and yeah, it does the exact same thing as the shock special condition, but it's not actually shock, so you can stack this and give someone -2 attack dice, which feels absolutely terrible when you're power starved, so you're probably not using your spenders all that often. So now your average character's builder under this is like 3 dice. That doesn't feel great. He's also going to be handing out stuns and staggers himself, so again, just more obnoxious things to make it really, really annoying for your opponent to play into this model. Yeah, he also fits really, really well here. And while we're on the topic of spider foes, we're also going to be taking a look at Mr. Mysterio here. So Mysterio is one of those models that kind of almost didn't make the cut for me. There was a few other options I was strongly considering. I've already mentioned most of them, and Mysterio was right on the edge there. But what won him over for me is his tactics card, which we will talk about when we talk about tactics cards. But basically, it kind of plays more into that of just your opponent's not going to do any of the things they want to do this turn, and they have to deal with that. But he does have some other good things in his kit for this sort of thing. Hypnosis Gas, making your opponent advance, is going to be great. Walk them out of position, always a good thing. Curtain Call, giving out staggers. We've already kind of talked about how useful that can be, and it's got a throw, so again, out of position, great. Tricks and Traps is just generally annoying. Now your opponent's not allowed to move near you either. Not that they really wanted to be near you anyways, because all of the other things you have that happen to them when they come close to you, but still, it's an extra little thing. And then he also has the smoke and mirrors here, so your opponent has to pay 2, otherwise he's rolling 5 defense dice, and with the amount of power attacks we're going to be putting on them with characters like Loki and Pyro, they're going to have a hard time doing that a lot of the time, so yeah, this is going to end up actually being a lot better than it usually is in most games, I think, under this list, because your opponent's not going to be able to afford it. And yeah, for that reason, Mysterio is making the cut here. And we do have one more spider foe that we are including in this list here, and that is going to be Electro. Electro, in my opinion, works really, really well for this sort of list. I played against him recently and found him really, really obnoxious trying to go into him. So I think he'll play this list fairly well. He's going to be handing out more shocks, so you get a little bit of redundancy with Crimson Dynamo there, which is cool. But the other thing that he does is he has his live wire and electrostatic abilities here. So Livewire is just like Tricks and Traps, and we've already kind of talked about that with Mysterio. It's one that does a little bit more damage though, so that's kind of cool. It has better odds to succeed here. So that's certainly nice, but the real big one is Electrostatic. So this is after an attack targeting Electro is resolved, he uses this power. The attacking character, if they are within 3, takes the damage and gains a shock condition. This is just really annoying. I played against an Electro in a game recently where he was doing this a lot to me, and I've started to come around to the idea of shock being one of the most infuriating conditions to play against. Yeah, it's really good. It's really annoying. The one thing that can kind of get around this is if your opponent has a lot of range 4 plus attackers, they don't care as much. So he might be a little bit more situational of a drop here, but I do really enjoy him, and I think this type of ability works really, really well for this type of list. So definitely a worthy include for him there. And before we talk about our final selection here, we are going to quickly give some more honorable mentions to some other characters that I strongly, strongly considered for this list. One of which is right here with Gwen. Gwen can be really annoying. She's going to take all of your models out of position, and then she's got that lifesaver, so when they go to make attacks on your models, maybe they finally were able to get an attack out of Crimson Dynamo range, and you pull them closer, and now they have to come into Crimson Dynamo range to make that attack. Very, very unfortunate times for them. can be very annoying to play into. But unfortunately, I felt like she kind of didn't quite fit the idea and was more just a good model. And that's not really what we're going for here. We're definitely going more towards a specific annoying game plan. And while I think she can be annoying to play against, that's not really her thing. Like you kind of expect that with her. So yeah, it's not really what we're going for. Another honorable mention here is Honey Badger. We have a bunch of things giving out things like Incinerate already with Pyro mainly. But Honey Badger kind of stacks with that in the same way Shocker stacks with Shock, or Loki stacks with Root. And it would be kind of funny to run all three of those here. But yeah, I personally, I just found she didn't do a lot of the other things that this list is trying to do. I mean, handing out Slow and Bleed is annoying, but is it as annoying as any of the other characters in this list? I'm not so sure about that. So yeah, she's certainly a solid choice and definitely helps out at some threat levels. There are definitely some threat levels for this list, partially because we gave a stone to Loki that are really, really awkward. But yeah, the Honey Badger unfortunately won't make the cut here, but definitely a worthy consideration if you're trying a version of this list yourself. Also on the page here, we have Iceman. Iceman's another model that I thought would be really interesting here. He's got that cold snap, so denying your opponent, when they move or end an attack within range 2 of you, they're going to gain the slow condition. If they're already slowed, they're going to take damage. Really, really annoying things to have happen to you, but unfortunately, I just kind of felt like Iceman. Oh, and he's handing out slows and staggers. Again, also good things that this list likes to do, but I just kind of felt like Iceman's going to end up feeling like he falls flat to a lot of the other characters in this list, especially stuff like Pyro, who I think are just kind of winning in that kind of regard, especially in the 3 threat slot where we already have 4 of them, so we definitely don't need another one. And the last honorable mention we're going to talk about, although I'm sure there are plenty more, I just don't want to spend this entire video talking about characters that I chose not to include, is Jean Grey here. And Jean Grey is really, really good for this sort of thing. She's got a sap power as well. She's got the shield mind power that Emma has. So both really, really good. Matter transmutation is also really, really cool as a way of just kind of shoving your opponent's characters out of position and things like that. So there's a few interesting things that you can do with Jean. But yeah, she's not quite making the cut here over the 5 threat that we are choosing to go with, which is actually Amazing Spider-Man. And the reason why we're taking Amazing Spider-Man here is just for witty banter, really. He doesn't do many of the other sorts of things here. I mean, full rerolls is nice and can be annoying for your opponent, especially when you roll a crit and you take no damage, and now suddenly you've gained for their attack that they've made. That's definitely going to rub salt in the wound. Um, but Witty Banter stacks really, really annoyingly with Crimson Dynamo's ability to reroll your opponent's dice because it's the same thing. It's just 1 die instead of 2. And that's really, really good. Oh, Crimson Dynamo made you reroll and you still managed to get a wild. What if you had to try again? Yeah, really, really obnoxious and definitely a strong pairing with Crimson Dynamo. So ASM takes the 3rd slot. Going into tactics cards, the first one we're going to have to take here is going to be Emma's Leadership. That is a tactics card, so we're going to need to make sure we have that. That's definitely going to be relatively important. Next, we're going to go ahead and get into our restricted cards here, and I think there's a fair argument between a lot of the restricted cards. Some of them are great for denial, like Brace or Indomitable. Some of them can be really obnoxious for your opponent, like Patch Up. Oh, you finally did a good amount of damage. Maybe you've almost got Crimson Dynamo down, and he's at full health again. Really, really annoying things to play into. Personally, I think any of those would have been perfectly fine picks, but the ones that I chose here are Disarm because A, nobody runs it, and B, it's perfect for this list. How do you feel about 2 fewer attack dice? How do you feel about between Shocker, the actual shock condition you have, and Disarm, your builders being 1 dice attacks? I love this. It's terrible. I'm a terrible person for this. I absolutely love it. So yeah, we're gonna pick Disarm, and then we're also going to take Sacrifice as our other one here again, just for that kind of no, you're attacking the person who I want you to attack. You are playing my game, not yours, and that's gonna be really really nice, especially with characters like Dormammu in the list, because now you're punching Dormammu and you're getting pushed away and you're getting hexed, or you're punching Electro and now you're getting a damage and you're getting shocked. Oh, you were on 1 health. Well, I guess your activation's over. Really annoying things, and yeah, that's what we're going for with that. Going into character cards slash affiliation cards, the first one we're going to look at here is Dark Restoration. Not much is more annoying than finally taking a model down through all of this crazy, stupid stuff we have and then having them show up again on the table. So, Dark Restoration's pretty solid here. We have a handful of good 3 threats that I think will be solid for this. Oh, you took out Pyro. He was the squishy one, right? What if he was back? So yeah, that's definitely going to be a solid one here. Another one of the ones we want to include here is Pyrotechnics. Again, our opponent isn't allowed to play the objective game. That's why we have Black Cat, but we're going to do even more of it with Pyrotechnics here as well. We're going to make you drop your objectives and get pushed. It's going to be a great time for us, not for you. Yeah, that's definitely going to be really strong. We also mentioned part of why we wanted to bring Mysterio is the Grand Illusion. What if your crits were skulls on top of all of this other stuff? Sounds like a good time to me. And then the last character card we're bringing here is the Cat and the Spider. This one's more of it's just a solid card thing. It gives us a safe grab if we're playing Amazing Spider-Man and Black Cat together, so that's cool to have. And yeah, just kind of that is there because it's a good card sort of thing. Oh, one other character card I almost forgot about here is Mind Transfer we're going to be running, and this one can just be really annoying. You know, you went ahead and you activated someone who has grunts, for example. What if your grunts activated token moved over to, I don't know, a 6th threat or something like that? Wouldn't that be funny? This card probably isn't actually that good, but it's fun, it's funny, so we're gonna do it, and yeah, it'll be a great time. The other cards we're including are generics, and we only have room left for 2 more of them, and the 2 that I've chosen to go with for this list are Trip Up. Again, we're gonna hand out stuns and staggers to you because that's rude, and we're trying to be rude here. That's kind of the whole point. So we're gonna do Trip Up, and then we're going to do Sucker. Power Denial, it's also kind of pretty solid in the current meta with things like Ultron running around, so yeah, Sucker's pretty good card. So yeah, these are gonna be our tactics cards here. Definitely some other choices could be made here. I'm not gonna spend too much time going over some of the other options available, but I definitely think for the kind of idea of what we're going for, these are probably the most like on brand for this sort of list. So we're sticking with these ones. Lastly, we have our crises selection, and crises selection is a little complicated for this one because on one hand, it really likes those more close, tight quarters scenarios where we're going to get to layer these debuffs and things like that as much as humanly possible. Really, really annoying to play into on those types of maps, whereas if you're on something like a D map, it's actually not that hard to avoid a lot of this stuff. So we wanna pick those closer scenarios, but we gotta be careful because a lot of them, like Gamma and Researcher, are only 15 threat, and that's really, really risky for us because we don't have a great 15 threat list, mainly because we put a stone on Loki, and I think it's very, very valid to say you don't want to have a stone on Loki for this list. Um, Personally, I just enjoy playing him with a stone more, so that's what we're doing. But yeah, I think it's very, very valid to decide not to. So the 15 is actually really nice for you because then it would be Loki, Emma, Crimson Dynamo, and then your 3 threat of choice. And I think probably either Black Cat or Pyro most of the time. Really, really obnoxious 15 threat. But otherwise, you just basically have to swap out Loki and put someone else or a couple other models in his place. Um, but yeah, so for objectives, we're going to be avoiding the 15s, but that said, we are definitely still going to bring a research station. We don't have much in the way of kind of extract focus things, so we want to be able to play to that. We can drop our opponents, but I don't think we're particularly amazing at grabbing them or running around with them or anything like that ourselves outside of Black Cat. So we're just going to be running that as kind of our, here we're going to bunker and do our thing. But the other ones we're going to be running, we want relatively low scoring. We want to be able to deny our opponent's points as much as possible. So we want those steals to feel super impactful. So we're going to be running Alien Ship Crashes Downtown just because it's a nice, relatively neutral map. It's going to be damaging your opponent for having power. And if you have all of these different debuffs on them at once, it's actually going to be kind of awkward for them to spend 3 power if that's how much they have, because there's going to be a lot of things that a lot of characters have that will cost 4 power and not as many things that will cost 3. So yeah, I think this one can be really, really obnoxious into certain characters when you're running Loki and Pyro against them. So That's going to be our first selection there. And then our other one is going to be Deadly Legacy Virus Cured. We are running Black Cat. She's going to be very, very good for this scenario. But also, in addition to that, having to pay extra power to pick up the second and third Legacy Cure is not going to be great for our opponents. They're going to have a much harder time dealing with that than we are. So, once again, we're just going to kind of make sure we are feasting on their famine. Um, Going into the secures here, like I said, I wanted to kind of avoid Gamma here. I think it's slightly too low threat for this list. So instead, we're going to be taking a look at running in, or not Infinity Formula here. I saw the 17 and just immediately started reading it. No, we're going to be looking at Deadly Meteors. It's the I map, so it's kind of similar to that E map that we like with Gamma. Of course, it's on a little bit more of an angle, so it's not quite as much of a back point, but it's a little bit more accessible to our opponent, but that's okay because it's also more accessible to us that way. It's a pay to flip, which your opponent's not going to have as good of a time with as you are because you can afford it more often, whereas for them that one power is not going to be as expendable. And it'll deal damage if they roll skulls, so that's cool too. So yeah, that's definitely going to be one of the ones we're including here. We're also going to be including Demons Downtown. Demons Downtown is, again, that E map that we like. It's going to be lighting all of our opponent's models on fire, and it does light us on fire, which we're not a crazy big fan of because that does make it easier for our opponent to damage us. But we probably have a few more tools to play around with that than our opponent does in the average list, so yeah, we think that'll be a relatively solid thing for this list as well. And then the last one here is going to be Mayor Fisk. It's 16 threat, which actually works really, really nicely with Loki having a stone. And the witnesses stab people and give them the stun condition for scoring. Like we said when we selected Black Cat for this roster, how dare you score objectives? Get stabbed and get stunned. So that is going to be our final crisis there, bringing us to our three secures. And that brings us to the final roster here. So going into characters here, we have Emma Frost and Dormammu leading the charge here. Next, we have Crimson Dynamo and Loki. They're going to be kind of some of our core models. We're going to try to bring at least one, if not both of them, almost every game. We've got Pyro, Black Cat, Shocker, and Mysterio taking some 3 threat slots in the list here. They're all going to be useful in different situations, just annoying our opponent as much as humanly possible. And then we have Electro and Amazing Spider-Man coming in for some slightly higher threats there. And again, just kind of stacking onto some of the things that some of these other characters are doing really, really nicely. And yeah, I think it's a pretty solid, interesting set of 10. I think it's definitely going to be really obnoxious to play against, which is 100% the plan here. So I think mission is probably succeeding here. Yeah, really, really, really happy with this set of 10 here. There's a lot of options where I think if you wanted to kind of play around this, and maybe, after playing it a few times, I'll decide, okay, maybe Electro isn't as good as I thought for this sort of thing, and I'll sub him out for someone else. But for now, I am really happy with this 10. I think it's really interesting, and I look forward to trying it out at some point. For tactics cards, we have Emma's Leadership. Our restricteds are Disarm and Sacrifice. We also have a handful of character slash one affiliation card here. So we have Dark Restoration for Dormammu, Pyrotechnics, the Grand Illusion, the Cat and the Spider, and Mind Transfer. And then lastly, we have a couple of generics as well with Trip Up and Sucker. So yeah, I think we have a pretty good selection here. We've got two generic tactics cards that'll go anywhere, and then of course two restricteds. So no matter what list we're playing, we have those four picked, and then we're probably running at least one of these characters. But even in the event that we're not, we have either Emma's Leadership or Dark Restoration. That's going to be allowing us to always be able to pick 5 legal playing cards that are, at least reasonably good, unless, I don't know, you brought Dormammu and you didn't bring a 3 threat, in which case, okay, I guess you only have 4. But, yeah, that's, I think, the only situation I can think of where that's going to happen, so hopefully not too much. And then lastly, we have crises here. So the crises, we have our research station, alien ship, and deadly legacy virus for our extracts. And for secures, we have deadly meteors mutate civilians, demons downtown, and Mayor Fisk vows to find missing witnesses. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with these. I really do like the way the 16 works with Loki with the stone, but I definitely think if you're running Loki without the stone, it's very, very worth considering maybe switching this out for Gamma or switching one of the others out for Gamma, because I do think if you can run a strong 15 with this, Gamma would definitely be a very obnoxious choice. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. Credit where credit is due. This list isn't 100, or like the ideas for this list aren't 100% mine. I talk a lot about this sort of list with my locals. I've had a few locals talking about throwing together something like this for a very, very long time. Notably Leland from over at Aegis Brand Studios, and also Alex, who's a regular on the channel. I will caution you guys, if you're planning on building a list like this for yourselves, do acknowledge that it's going to be incredibly annoying for your opponent to play against. So, try not to play it very much. It's probably okay once in a while, but make sure your opponent knows what they're getting into, knows that your list is going to cause them to have a terrible game, because this list is truly for terrible people. And if you're bringing this to your locals night every week, nobody's going to want to play with you anymore. So naturally, when we go to bring this for the channel, as we do with all of our roster building rosters, we try to bring them in either an event or a battle report at some point. This one I will not be bringing to an event because I happen to like the people in my local meta and I don't want them to hate me. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to bring this against Alex because he's one of the people who's been throwing around ideas for this sort of list. So we get to be a terrible, terrible person to Alex, and yeah, Alex, you can enjoy this at some point in the near future. But that is going to do it for this roster building video. If you guys have any ideas, if there's characters that I missed that you think should really be in this type of roster, definitely let me know down below. I'm sure there's tons of them. There's a surprising amount of characters in this game that are just there to annoy your opponent, and it's a little alarming how many there are when I kind of got into it and started kind of going through. Because I think I mentioned at least like 5 or 6 honorable mentions, which is kind of insane. But yeah, that's going to do it for my part for this one. So if you did enjoy, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do roster building videos like these once a month, but when we don't do these, we also have character spotlights and things like that coming out on the weekdays. We also do battle reports and things like that on the weekends. So if you're interested in any of that sort of thing, feel free to jump on in. But that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, everybody, have a great day. Peace.